Thank you for having me here tonight, Anna. And thank you, all of you who have joined us. I want to tell you a little bit about how I'm going to structure the presentation. The first, by far much bigger part, is going to be the general information about how you evaluate colleges. What information do you need to have? It's going to be your toolkit. And the second, very small part, really, at the very end, is going to be more specifically about Landmark and how it fits into the overall landscape I'll have been describing to you. So about putting questions in the chat, if they are general questions, please, by all means, put them in as soon as you come up with them. And if they are about Landmark in particular, if you can hold them till we get to that segment, I'd appreciate it. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Aaron and about me to start. Aaron is an extraordinary, I am his mom, of course, young man who is now 28 years old. He has ADHD, executive function challenges, and has had that challenge throughout his education and continued to have it as he entered college. I, on the other hand, am the quintessential helicopter mom. So I like to joke that I was a helicopter mom before the expression had even been coined. And what that meant in our household was that when Aaron came home from school, I would sit him down, make sure the homework got done, and do my best to make sure it got handed in the next day. When he was a junior, it was early in 2010, I realized in an aha moment that what I had done by becoming his executive functioning was essentially prevent him from developing any skill of his own in that area. So as he developed interest in exploring college, I knew that he was going to need a college that offered him some real support. I dragged the family to an open house at Landmark, where we sat in an audience of families very much like our own. And I knew immediately that we had found just the right place for Aaron. Aaron, on the other hand, knew that we had not. So he, having lived with me for all 17 of his years, knew that the best thing he could do was offer up a compromise. So Aaron agreed to go to Landmark's summer program that July, only for the purpose of being able to come home and tell me what a terrible experience it had been, why he wouldn't be going. Only it didn't work, because he got to campus, fell in love. For him, it was liberating to be someplace where everybody got it. So Aaron entered Landmark as a freshman in fall of 2011, graduated with an associate's degree in 2013 and transferred to American University, and has remained in DC, where he has made a life for himself. I tell you this not because I believe that Landmark is the perfect choice for you or your students, but because while making this journey with Aaron, while watching him make his own journey, I came to understand how incredibly important finding the right match is. It's important for all students, but it's absolutely essential for neurodiverse students. And it can mean the difference between success and a student turning their back on college, feeling as though they're just not cut out for it, when the fact is that they just weren't cut out for the college they were attending. So I want to share with you the information that will help you determine match for you if you're a student, or parents for your students. So with that, I am going to share my slides with you. So we are going to be talking about navigating the college search for students who learn differently. And I always like to start this with an Albert Einstein quote that I particularly love. Everybody is a genius. But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. I think neurodiverse students who learn differently, compare themselves frequently and often unfavorably to their neurotypical peers, as though they weren't as smart, as though they weren't as capable. And yet we know nothing could be farther from the truth. I think of it as though they are square pegs trying to fit in round holes. So I encourage you to approach this college journey as the opportunity to find a square hole for your square peg. And while many people, when thinking about starting this journey, think about gathering information about a range of colleges, I want to encourage you to think of it as an inward journey, because that's a really important piece of this. Think of it as the journey towards greater self-awareness, towards greater self-knowledge. Students, ask yourself all kinds of questions. These are really critical to finding a match. Who am I? What do I want from my college experience? Why am I going to college? Ask yourself, what kind of a learner am I? Am I a visual learner, an auditory learner? Do I learn by doing? Am I a kinesthetic learner? Ask yourself about your strengths and your weaknesses. And it's particularly important to really look at your strengths. What kind of environment do you learn best in? And finally, and I think most important, ask yourself, what kind of accommodations and supports do I need if I'm to best ensure my opportunity for success? I want to paint a picture for you by the numbers. In high school, 94% of students who learn differently receive some kind of support. And yet only 17% of these students go on to utilize the resources that are available to them in college. There are many reasons why. I think chief among them are fear of stigma, and also how much more difficult it is to access these supports in college. The process is very different than it was in high school. But then I think it's also important to look, what are the college outcomes and how do they relate to these other numbers? Nationally, fewer than 60% of all students trying to earn a bachelor's degree actually succeed in earning one. And if you're a neurodiverse student, only 34% of the students in this group will actually succeed in earning that degree. And yet, I don't want you to be discouraged, because you have the ability to dramatically change that outcome. We know that students who don't get accommodations and support immediately face a much higher risk of not graduating. One study done at a large state university found that the risk of not graduating within 6 years was 3.5 times higher for students who waited until their second year to request accommodations. So take charge of the situation, improve your odds, access and utilize support. If we're going to talk about support, it's also important that you be aware of the different kinds of support structures that exist in post-secondary education. So I like to think of it as a pyramid. And at the base of this pyramid are all 4,300 or so institutions of higher education, all required by law, the Americans with Disabilities Act, to provide accommodations that give students with disabilities equal access. Now, while the law requires that these institutions provide accommodations, it doesn't specify what accommodations they must provide. So they can include things like extended time, reduced distraction environments, note takers, assistive technology, reduced course load, priority registration. These are just some of the few things that can be included, but they will vary from school to school. So make sure that part of your investigation is exactly what accommodations the school will offer you. The other thing that's going to vary is how easy or difficult it is to get these accommodations. So the institutions that offer accommodations only are in complete compliance with the law. But there are institutions, a smaller subset, that go beyond and offer some additional services. So in addition to accommodations, some skill building, that might be writing and math labs, it might be coaching, it might be a study skills class. What's important to know is that studies have found that for every hour weekly that students use these additional services, their GPA increases. Going on to yet again another smaller group of schools are those traditional colleges that have within them some kind of structured learning support program. These are much more comprehensive programs of support. There is generally support both in and out of the classroom. At some of these colleges, it's like looking at an a la carte dinner menu. There is a fee attached to every kind of support that you might want to use. So be sure you're aware, if that's the case, what the services that might support you or your student will cost in the end. So finally, at the very top of this pyramid, because there are so few, are the post-secondary programs in two colleges, Landmark College in Vermont, Beacon College in Florida, that are designed exclusively and only for students who have learning differences. So at these schools, all accommodations and beyond access services are built into the design of the teaching and the very functioning of the institution. As important as knowing what kind of services you can expect from a school, also find out who is going to be providing the services. In the majority of cases, they will be provided by a peer tutor or a faculty who, while having complete mastery of the content, has not been specially trained to deliver services or to teach unique learners. Only in about 5% of instances would you be receiving services from an LD, ADHD, or other kind of specialist. Another thing to be aware of as you move from high school to college is how the legal landscape changes. In secondary school, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, the IDEA, and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act mandate and are the laws guiding the services you receive. When you get to college, it becomes the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, and again, Section 504. But more important, of course, than the names of the laws is understanding what is the impact to students. So in K-12, you are guaranteed a free and appropriate public education. What that means is that the district is always the responsible entity for identifying and evaluating students who might need these services, also for paying the costs of the evaluation. After results are in, the school then forms a team to create either an IEP or a 504 plan for the student. And parents are often involved, very involved in this process. There is an important difference between IEPs and 504 plans. The law requires that all students on an IEP get formal transition planning. The same thing is not true of students on a 504 plan. From my perspective, that's unfortunate because that kind of transition planning can be the key to helping students thrive in college. When you get to college, you need to be able to fully understand your learning difference, be able to articulate it, talk about the services you received, while you were in school, what worked, what didn't work, and also be able to articulate exactly what you're asking for. If you are doing transition planning as part of an IEP, you will get experience at all of that. You will get experience advocating for yourself, which will then give you the confidence you're going to need to be able to do it when you get to college. So if you are a student on a 504 plan, I encourage you to see if the school will provide you some transition planning, even though it is not required of them. And at the very least, make sure that your 504 plan is very specific about the accommodations you have been receiving and what is recommended in college. So now I'm going to look at what's the state of this in college when you get there. So the ADA is a civil rights law. It prohibits discrimination on the basis of a disability. It's designed to provide access to all students. However, the college bears no responsibility. The student must self-identify. The student must provide whatever documentation the college requires. And if more is required, the family bears the cost of that. And perhaps most important, since students are likely over 18 when they get to college, for the first time, they will not be able to call on their family for assistance advocating for what they need. Students, you must be able to advocate for yourself once you get to college. And that is of critical importance. So transitions can be challenging for all of us and at all stages of our life. I think the transition from high school to college can be particularly challenging. So what do we do to make it easier? The first step is just what I've been talking about, transition planning. It's been shown that students who have really specific transition plans that specify accommodations and supports are not only more likely to access those accommodations in college, but they're more likely to keep using them, something that's really critical to their success. But the other piece is finding, of course, a good college match, which means knowing what you expect, what you need from college, and finding a college that will not only offer these things, but will deliver on their promises. Access impacts success. So if you are going to get services, disability services in college, you need to disclose. And yet, as I talk to students and sometimes with families, there can be a certain resistance to disclosing. So why is that? Some students are really looking forward to the opportunity that they'll have in college to establish an identity that's completely independent of their disability status. Others, as I mentioned before, are concerned about stigma. Will their peers think that they're less capable, less intelligent? Will their peers think that they're getting an unfair advantage if they get something like a note taker or extra time on tests? How will faculty respond? It's shocking to me that there's still a significant number of educators who believe that the things we call learning or attention disorders are really laziness and not learning differences at all. Students may not disclose because they don't know what's available to them or how to access it. But I think one of the most detrimental reasons for not disclosing is underestimating how important these services are to your success. It isn't just the coursework that's more rigorous when you get to college. The executive functioning demands of college are exponentially larger than anything students have experienced in high school. You need the ability to manage time, to plan long-term assignments. And all of that can be helped if you are using the supports available to you. So I recommend that you disclose early. It's the best opportunity to evaluate not just the services a college offers, but you can also evaluate attitudes. The admissions office should be able to tell you about what the college offers. And more than that, it should be easy to get an appointment to speak with disability services. If it isn't, I advise caution. So evaluating disability services, how do you start? It starts, of course, by identifying what exactly it is you need. So that inner journey that I talked about at the beginning. You also should review your IEP and 504 plans. Take a look at what things on those plans you're using. You may find that you are no longer using some of those accommodations. Make a list of the things that seem important to you. In your IEP and 504 meetings, have a discussion of your college needs. And then also, whatever you think your needs are, I think it's beneficial to compare that to what the people who know you best think, your teachers, your parents, your counselors. Do the investigation and explore college websites, explore both disability services at every college, and also you'll be using services that are universally available to all students, like the Academic Support Center. Investigate all of those things. If you feel you want still more knowledge, don't hesitate to get in touch with admissions or disability services, call, email. You're in the driver's seat. Ask all the questions you need to get the answers that you want. While you're doing your investigation, also take the time to find out where disability services is located on the campus. Many times it's located far outside the physical mainstream of the campus. And if disability services is not in a convenient, easy, and quick to get to place, might you discontinue using those very services? And finally, I have a disability services worksheet that I'd be happy to email to any of you who would like that, and I'll show you what's on it. Anna, any questions?
There is one question in the chat. Actually, there's two questions now in the chat.
Sure.
The first one is, what if 504 services didn't really help? And then the second part is, will college have other types of services compared to high school?
Those are complicated. I don't know where to go with 504, what to do if 504 services didn't help. I think I need much more information about the specifics to be able to answer that question. I'd love to take that up with the person who asked outside the session or via email or a private meeting like this. But what was the second part of that question? I've already forgotten, Anna.
Sure. And the second part is, will college have other types of services compared to high school?
College will have different kinds of services, but you won't necessarily get more services. Sometimes you will be in a position where there will be fewer available to you. But there are some things that can be common at some colleges that aren't common in high schools. Not all high schools will offer assistive technology. Some colleges might offer a reduced course load, priority registration, a note taker, which you might also have in high school. There is a range of accommodations that are offered in various high schools. There is another range that are offered in college. They're not always a perfect match, but in some colleges, you might find things you haven't previously had access to. Again, if there are some specifics you're really interested in talking about, I'd love to speak with you outside this webinar tonight, and we can dive really into very specific questions. Anything else there, Anna?
Nope, I think that's it for now.
Okay. Let me show you this evaluation worksheet. So you can create something different, but this is just something created by Landmark's Institute for Research and Training. You can keep a sheet like this for every single college you explore that has not just the name of the institution, but disability services will be called different things at different schools. So you can write that down. You can note what kind of support structures are offered, whether they're simply accommodations or compliance types of support, whether there are services beyond, whether it is comprehensive or embedded. Write down the office hours so you know how much access you will have. The number of staff providing services can be critically important. And then take note, check off the specific services and note any other kinds of services that we didn't even list here. Then take a moment to explore how you're really feeling about the college, the pros, the cons, any other thoughts you're having. And finally, rate that college, where it falls. 1 star, 5 stars, somewhere in between. Again, I can supply this to anybody who's interested in having a copy of the worksheet. Evaluating accommodations is not a one and done process. So it is ongoing. Students should continue to meet regularly with their advisor, with disability services, to really address the effectiveness of the accommodations. Are they effective? Is there something else you need? Your needs can vary as classes vary and as your life circumstances vary. It's important to always monitor the extent to which you're able to access the content in your classes. And if you find in any class, in any situation, that your access is diminished, it's time to go back to self-advocating for what you need. So services and accommodations are at the heart of finding a good college match, but there's much more than that to consider. Student life and campus connectedness. What is the culture of the campus? Is it welcoming? Is it inclusive? What is student life like? You know, students spend an awful lot of their time in college not in class, and that's where much of the learning takes place. So are there activities that will allow you to broaden your interests and explore the interests you currently have? If you're a student on the spectrum, what is the availability of social pragmatic support? Chances are at a college that's only offering accommodations, you're not going to find that. But you may find some level of support, and it'll be greater and greater at each of the various levels of support. Mental health services. You know, college can be stressful for students, even when you find a great match. Students, many are living away from home for the first time, making decisions of a kind that they haven't made before, and sometimes experiencing the consequences of those decisions. But more than that, part of our reality has become this COVID-19 world that we're living in, and we are all experiencing a collective trauma. Students in particular are losing many of their end of high school rituals. They've had to learn how to learn remotely. They are experiencing a great deal of anxiety and a concern about what's to come in the future. So making sure there are mental health services available to you is really critically important. At Landmark, 60% of our students will use a counselor from our health services at some point during the semester. And there are COVID-19 concerns to also consider. It seems that things are going to get better, are going to open up, but I would still be asking questions about what the college would do if learning had to, at some point in time, become remote again. When that happened a year ago, there was no opportunity for planning, but there has been since. So the questions to ask are, how safe is the state? What was the college, particular college's track record for keep students safe on campus? How would content be delivered? Students do much better in a virtual live classroom where they can continue to interact with peers and faculty. What support services would be available remotely? It should not lessen if you are learning remotely. You should have all the same services under that circumstance. And finally, has the college made plans to keep students connected, to keep them feeling a part of their college community? So those are some of the considerations, and they lead to a large number of questions, much larger than could actually fit on this page. Many I've already addressed, but some others are, can I take a reduced course load? That can make a transition easier, particularly for a student with executive functioning challenges. Are services both in and out of the classroom? Is assistance one-to-one or in a group? What documentation is required? Again, it varies. Fewer than half of colleges and universities will accept an IEP or a 504 plan as standalone documentation. Most schools will ask that the documentation be within 3 years. Many also want to make sure that the data is normed for adults, not on a K-12 basis. Is the college test optional? By the way, more and more are. If that's important to you, make sure you know in advance. And finally, what are the college's retention, graduation, and placement rates for students who have learning differences? The college visit is a really important part of your exploration. There haven't been very many on-campus visits in recent past. Most campuses are closed, but depending on when you are planning on attending college, that could change. If, however, you would like to start now, I would encourage you to take advantage of all the virtual experiences that exist, because they will give you the opportunity to actually explore more colleges than you might be able to otherwise. So visit large and small, urban and rural, traditional and colleges with specific programs. Attend open houses. You know, all of us colleges have gotten incredibly creative about the kinds of virtual experiences we provide. Landmark open houses include student panels, parent panels, demonstration classes. They're really great opportunities to get to know a college and get a feel for it. And feel free to ask for more. Colleges will generally gladly connect you with a current student. If you want to talk to a student who has your particular learning profile and see how college is working for them, how the supports they're getting are working, ask to be connected. Parents, you too can ask to be connected with parents of current students. So don't be afraid to ask for what you need.
And we do have, sorry, quickly, we
Go
did
ahead.
have another question in the chat and it looks like it might fit here. So maybe
Great.
I'll pose it and then if you can address it. It was, do you recommend a gap year or two for neurodiverse students?
That's so funny because take a look at the slide I just put up. You read my mind as we are. That's exactly what I'm going to talk about right now. So that is one of many options, but I want to talk first about transition programs. So you may determine that college isn't the right next step. How do you determine that? At Landmark, we encourage people to do an actual inventory. Students, make out a list of all the things that you take responsibility for on your own. The academic things that you take responsibility for, the life skills. For example, do you wake yourself up for school? If you take medication, do you take responsibility for that? Parents, make a similar list. What are you still doing for your student? And then ask the school to make a list of their own. Sometimes families are surprised at some of the services students are receiving that they weren't even aware of. So when you have these three lists in front of you, you can take a look at what needs to move from a parent or a school list onto the student list. And having a long runway, having a long period of time to make these transitions is a good thing because they're not easy. They take time. If you get to the point where you don't think college is the right next step, then explore transition programs which offer more services outside the classroom. At the same time, many of them partner with a nearby college, university, or tech school to offer an academic program, but they offer things like life skill development, money management, counseling, life coaching, occupational therapies. So that can be a really good option. But now on to the question that was in the chat, gap years. Gap years can be great for any student. I think many students who have learning differences are ready for a break from academics. And the only real advice I have about gap years is you can choose a structured one. And there are all kinds of resources on the web or at your schools and the counseling offices to guide you towards specific programs, or you can choose a less structured one. But in any case, make sure they provide a real growth opportunity for the student. So they can include things like travel, volunteering, job internships and training. Colleges look upon gap years really favorably if they have, in fact, provided a real opportunity for growth. We find that students come to us more prepared, more self-motivated, more ready to take on the challenges of college after a gap year. So if that is something you want students or families, your students want for themselves, I encourage you to explore it. It can be a really beneficial way to spend the year after high school. Before I get into this next section in which I'm going to talk uh, more specifically about Landmark, I want to open it really widely again for questions of all kinds about anything that we've discussed. And we'll give you a couple moments to put some things in the chat, or I can go on and talk about Landmark. Anna, are you seeing anything?
Nothing yet. So maybe if you want to keep going, I'll keep an eye and
Okay.
continue to pose them as they come in.
So on to Landmark. So Landmark is one of those two colleges exclusively for students who learn differently. So our students may have language-based disabilities like dyslexia. They may have ADHD. They may be on the spectrum. The curriculum of Landmark is a traditional liberal arts curriculum with the same rigor you would expect at any liberal arts college. What is different about Landmark is not the coursework, it's the way we support students. And that's what Landmark is known for. At the same time, we're really recognized as a fine educational institution as well. We're very proud of the fact that for the second year in a row, US News and World Reports has named us to the top spot in two different categories: Most Innovative College and Best Undergrad Teaching in Regional Colleges North, the category that we're ranked in. Some fast facts: we're located in Putney, Vermont, on 125 self-contained acres, both open and wooded land. We have about 450 students, so we're really small. They represent 38 different states, about 12 different countries. The student to faculty ratio is 6:1, something pretty extraordinary for colleges. But what that means for you students and for your students, parents, is average class size is 8 to 12 people. So it's a really personal, very hands-on education. There are 10 associate's and bachelor's degree programs, plus a range of concentrations, 209 faculty and staff for those 450 students, more than 36 clubs, intercollegiate and intramural athletic programs, and outdoor recreation options. 1 in 2 of our students, 50%, are transfer students, and that's a statistic that I find unfortunate. What it indicates is the number of students who don't find a fit at their first college, who are looking for a better college experience and come to Landmark for that reason. But 65% is the really hopeful statistic I'd like to put out there for you. You may remember the numbers I gave you at the beginning of the evening. Fewer than 60% of all students and only about 34% of students who learn differently achieve the bachelor's degree that they're seeking. At Landmark, students who come and stay through an associate's degree, 65% will go on to earn their bachelor's degree, and that's a really significant number. Some highlights of our programming. One is the many different paths that are available to students at Landmark. We like to say that there are many on-ramps and off-ramps at the college so that you can customize your experience at Landmark to your objectives. So there are both short-term programs and degree programs. We start working with students who are still in high school. We have online dual enrollment programs that help students earn 3 transferable college credits and experience the rigors of college coursework. But most importantly, they get to work with faculty that are trained to teach unique learners. And the hidden curriculum inside all Landmark courses is students' development of skills, strategies, executive functioning, self-advocacy, all the things that will help you make a smoother transition into college. Another thing available to high school students is our summer programs. The high school program Erin was in is for rising juniors and seniors. It's an opportunity to experience life on a residential college campus for 3 weeks. It's an opportunity to take some uncredited classes, a study skills class, a writing class in which students can start to work on their personal essay for college applications. You also take an elective, but again, the focus is on learning skills and strategies that will serve you wherever your educational path takes you and beyond that as well. We have a summer course, a college readiness course for students who have just graduated from high school and are headed off to a traditional college in the fall. During the school year, our undergraduate shorter term programs include a bridge experience. You can come to Landmark for 1 semester or 2, an intensive experience focused on learning the skills and strategies you need to successfully transfer elsewhere. We also have a transition at college program called TAC for students who are working particularly on executive functioning and want a slower transition to college. You take fewer courses, more hands-on support, more family communication, and an opportunity to develop executive functioning in 3 different arenas: academic, interpersonal relationships, and independent living skills. Our associate's degrees can also be a launching pad for transferring to another college. In part, students transfer after an associate's degree because we may not have their major. Really small colleges don't have the breadth of majors that a large institution would have. But also, we are really good at creating independent, self-motivated learners who are ready to spread their wings and succeed in another environment. And we will support students who want to transfer. And then, of course, you can always stay for a bachelor's degree. Perspectives in Learning is our cornerstone class. All of our undergrad students take it however long they're going to be with us. They take it in their first semester. It's an opportunity to really dive into who you are as a learner, to read your testing, to research your diagnosis, to really explore your strengths and challenges, to really know yourself and your profile as a learner, and to, as a result, build the skills and strategies you're going to use throughout Landmark and beyond. It is a unique course that students really talk about a lot when they reflect on their experiences at Landmark. The community at Landmark is another piece of what I personally love so much about the college. When you get a campus of neurodiverse students, the environment is by nature inclusive, welcoming. Nobody is on the outside looking in. I like to joke that there is no mainstream or out of the mainstream at Landmark. There's just this stream and everybody is swimming in it. I mentioned earlier the Landmark College Institute for Research and Training. We are really fortunate to have a research institute embedded in the campus that is on the cutting edge of research that is transforming the way we teach neurodiverse students and is changing outcomes. It also offers students an opportunity to participate in this cutting edge research, not as subjects, as researchers. Right now, the Institute has an award of funding from the National Science Foundation that's enabling Landmark students to work on creating a virtual reality education game that's designed to increase access to STEM for students who are on the spectrum. Some really exciting stuff is happening there. We also have a Center for Neurodiversity. Landmark is built on the belief that neurodiversity is a strength, and the center highlights that strength. Our students, many of them, come to call their learning difference their superpower. Um, Neurodiversity is a paradigm that acknowledges and accepts different ways of thinking and acting. It's a diversity and inclusion perspective applied to autism, ADHD, learning disabilities, and other invisible disabilities. New ideas, insights, unique ways of viewing the world come from neurodiverse people who have a different way of looking at the world and a different way of solving some of our challenges. We also have centers for diversity and inclusion, which include a Women and Gender Center, the Rise Up Center for students who identify as students of color, and a Stonewall Center for our LGBTQA students and those who support them. So I've been talking about all the ways in which Landmark is different, unique, but I also want to assure you that we are the same as any college experience in the ways that are important to students and to families as well. We have lots of sports, a state-of-the-art brand new soccer field. Our sports have a no-cut policy on our team so that everybody can experience them if they want, even if they're not the most adept at a particular sport. We have speaker series, clubs, social activities, shuttles that take students off campus. We have study abroad that are led by Landmark faculty and staff. Our study abroads are 3-week trips during summer and winter break to some really exciting places. Lower left on this slide, you'll see a photo taken by one of our students in Japan doing an art class during study abroad. A year ago, January, right before everything shut down, we had students in the Caribbean learning to sail a ship, while other students were in London on an immersive theater experience. And down right is the picture of my favorite trip, the one that I really want to go on. We have students going to Botswana to participate in a lion and rhino conservation project. Again, really exciting opportunities. And finally, I want to paint a picture for you of what support looks like at Landmark. So it's wraparound, it's fully integrated. There are never any additional fees. As Perspectives in Learning is the cornerstone class, the key person in all of the support is a student's advisor. From the time a student comes to campus, they meet with their advisor at least throughout the entire first year weekly, more if needed. The advisor is like the conductor of the orchestra, can not only advise a student, but offer executive function coaching. All our advisors are trained in that. The advisor can also point students towards other forms of support on campus that they may not be already using. The Drake Center for Academic Support differs from other colleges in that it's faculty run. So students can access one-to-one faculty staff resources in writing, reading, and study skills. There are special centers in science, computer science, math, and business. Students can go to the center if they simply want help focusing, or many of our students need help initiating homework activity. So that was true for Aaron. He would go there because once he would begin an activity, once he initiated the homework, he could follow through easily. More executive function coaching, by the way, is available at the Drake Center. We offer our students educational technology and additional support for using that technology in the center. We have counseling and health services, an extraordinary residential support system that is composed of a residential director as well as student RAs. We have 9 therapy dogs on campus, certified dogs who can be found throughout the campus, but we'd like to joke that they also have office hours. If students want to spend one-on-one time with one of our dogs, they can make an appointment. We have social pragmatic support for students who are on the spectrum. If you would like to know the details of that support, please put a question in the chat and I can dive into that much more fully. And finally, and really important to both students and families, is Career Connections. They are the team that helps students who want to transfer, but they are also the team that offers enhanced training, programming, and internships specifically related to neurodiversity. They have created partnerships with employers worldwide. We have codified agreements with JP Morgan Chase, Ernst & Young, Dell, Hasbro, the Vermont Genetics Network. These employers are coming to campus first to learn what it means to create a workplace that is welcoming to and productive for a neurodiverse workforce. They are coming to campus because they are offering internships to our students, and many of our students go on to gain employment from the relationships they have explored working through internships, which are, by the way, required for all of our bachelor's degree students. So I hope that I have given you the tools you need tonight to really begin this exploration on your own. And I wish you the best in this journey. It's a really exciting and maybe even a little stressful time. But if you have the tools, I think it'll make it a lot less stressful for you. And so I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to again ask for questions. And you can feel free to ask about anything general, specific. Anna, I'll ask you to continue to modify the chat and give me any questions that show up there.
Yeah, so we do have a good one that came in a little bit ago, but I think you may be particularly well positioned to help answer this one. Well, at least from the perspective of a parent. So the question is, my student is not very motivated to go to college. What's the right balance between independence and helicopter mom? If you have any.
And what was the rest of that?
Between being a helicopter mom and allowing independence.
That's not a few sentence answer. And I had to learn that lesson the hard way, being a helicopter mom, but I will tell you that motivation is a really important part of what helps students succeed. All students, but in particular, a student with a learning difference is going to face additional challenges. And if they don't have a strong motivation to be in college, it may not be the right next step. You know, for some students, the right next step is exploring career. And many of those students, by the way, choose to come back to college later. But one of the things I would ask about the lack of self-motivation, is it really about self-motivation, or is it about the concerns that your student has about whether they're capable or qualified or able to succeed in college? Because if it's a question of confidence, there is more to be done. There are many more avenues for supporting that. And Landmark in particular, I think is really good at supporting students who are motivated to be there, but who lack confidence. So I think make sure, first of all, that it really is motivation, but if it is lack of motivation to do college, it really may not be the right next step. Um, college, any college, landmark, it's challenging. It is challenging. You got to want to be there and you got to want to do the work. I hope that answers your question. You know, feel free to come back at me with another one if it doesn't. I'm happy to keep going.
Thanks. Haven't seen anything else come in the chat. I did post in the chat just to let you all know that the recording of this session will be up on our webpage within the next couple days. And we are doing weekly drawings for everyone that attends our live sessions. So I put the link to that as well in case anyone would like to enter. But we'll hang out for another minute or two and see if any other questions come in. And if not, feel free to go enjoy the rest of your night, everyone. Thanks for being here.
And I will add another couple of things as well. Remember that I'm really happy to meet with you one-on-one outside tonight's format. So if you have many more specific questions than we could deal with in this kind of a format, please feel free to reach out to me. If you want information about Landmark or just more general questions, I'm really happy to be a resource for you, whether you're a student or a parent. So please take advantage of that. I'm happy to send you that disability services worksheet if you think that that would be of use. And I noticed that while I was talking, Anna, another question came in.
Yes, it did. And I'm also going to put your email address in the chat if that's all right, so people know.
That's perfect. Thank you so much.
So the next question was, for a rising senior with a mixed looking transcript, how important is it to take SAT or ACT now if we think he may need to take time off or start at a community college before transferring to a 4-year school?
For a senior, well, so you mentioned the mixed transcript. You didn't mention whether your student is a good tester or that's not a strong point. For many of the students that I work with, they're totally college capable, but not good test takers. Be aware that so many colleges are not requiring standardized tests anymore. And if you don't feel that tests are a good reflection of your student, I don't think it's important personally to give them the additional stress of taking those tests. Anna, do you have a perspective on this, by the way? I should have invited you long ago to jump in and add your perspective. What do you think about test taking?
Well, my sense is that so many colleges are going to the test optional route anyway, especially kind of right now with the pandemic and with how hard it is to even be able to get to take a test. So I suppose it couldn't hurt, just to see. You don't have to submit your scores if you aren't happy with them. And it might be just a good practice exercise, but my sense really is that most schools right now are not requiring them. So it may, if it's just an added stress and it feels like it's just going to be discouraging, it might not be necessary.
That echoes my thoughts on it. So much of this journey can be stressful that any pieces of the stress that you can pull out of the equation are going to benefit you as a family and your student.
We did have another question come in over our Facebook live stream, which was asking if you could talk a little bit about how students develop, I guess, leadership skills on their own.
Leadership skills. I wish I understood more specifically what we're talking about when we talk about leadership skills. Leadership.
Oh, I think I may have read the question wrong too. Sorry, I was trying to interpret. There was a missing space. It looks like it might say, can you talk about how students lead or develop on their own?
Can you talk about students
lead? So maybe not so much leadership, but just kind of maybe how students go through that process of opportunities at Landmark. It sounds like
So how students go through that.
so let's see, sorry, I'm trying to interpret a little bit,
And I'm
but it
watching the
sounds
words
like
go by at the time and then losing thread, Anna.
yeah, it sounds like the question is, can you talk a little bit about opportunities at Landmark for students to gain independence and kind of develop on their own?
So the beauty of an environment that is small and very personal is that beginning with the advisor, the greatest amount of scaffolding is placed around students as they enter college, and rightly so. That is when they need the most significant amount of support. But as they continue through the advising curriculum, one of the things that the advisor is always moving students toward, that the college is always moving students toward, is greater independence. And as students develop that independence, the scaffolding is stripped away as appropriate for that stage of their development. So that is the benefit of being someplace that is that small, in classes that are only 8 to 12 students, with an advisor that you're meeting with weekly, is that progress is monitored and clearly seen. So we don't take more scaffolding away than a student warrants at a particular point in time. But the end result of the way the process works is that students do develop independence, do become self-motivated, independent learners, and have developed the skills to succeed in any environment beyond Landmark, whether it's educational. You know, many of our students go on to master's degrees elsewhere too, or they may go directly from Landmark into their careers. But the whole process is designed to help them gain that independence. And part of it is through the self-awareness, through all the self-exploration and self-discovery they do while they are a student, beginning with that first class that they take, Perspectives in Learning. So it is a really natural part of the process at Landmark.
Thanks, Fran.
Sure.
All right, I think that may be it for questions.
Going once? So if you didn't get to ask your question tonight, or if you feel again that it would be better one-to-one, please do reach out to me. I would love to talk to you. It's what I love doing. So I hope to have contact with you all at another point in time, but I do wish you a good journey. And I thank you, Anna, for bringing me here tonight. And I thank all of you for joining us.